really quick.
Perfect. Okay, Brandon, today we're talking about the Restrict Act. Now, talk to me like I'm an idiot because I'm really good at being an idiot.
So it's neither of us have done as much research as we need to. So we're talking about what is more commonly known as the TikTok ban, right? What is it, Bill 686 or something? The restrict bill. So
Right, 686.
You know, I like we were talking about earlier. Both of our positions tend to be, how can we be more free individually? It's a pretty American ideal, and I think it's a good one. So without even knowing anything, that tends to be, my stance. But the more I think both of us what we plan on doing for this podcast is we plan on kind of doing one of us takes one side and one of us does devil's advocate. But the more I
we were going to
learn about this, we're going to kind of do a debate. The more I learn about it, I mean, the truth of the matter is, it's an interesting dilemma that this whole thing puts, because I never want anyone to have control over me. I am not pro-China, that's for sure. And so when we're talking about, the concern, and we can get right into it, and maybe you can take over if you want, but I'll start by quoting New York Times here. Here's the contention. Quote, lawmakers in the West have increasingly expressed concern that TikTok and its parent company, ByteDance, may put sensitive user data, like location information, into the hands of the Chinese government. They have pointed to laws that allow the Chinese government to secretly demand data from Chinese companies and citizens for intelligence gathering operations. So that's the crux of all of this for, U.S. lawmakers, for Congress, when they're, the thing that separates TikTok from all other social media, because all of them, I'm sure, are evil, and they're doing the same type of, data collection. I wouldn't trust any of them in any special way. But the biggest concern is the China ties with, ByteDance. And I can't, the more I look at it, I can't disagree with that entirely. I mean, I don't, it's like I can side with China. So, and I think that's actually, it's interesting. It's pretty cleverly, I think that's the right way for anyone to focus on it if they're pro TikTok ban, to focus on the terrible, Chinese, communist regime. You have anything to sound off on?
Well, so we've already seen TikTok be banned on federal devices. There are certain campuses as well, school campuses, that have banned TikTok.
Right.
Like the University of Idaho is one of those schools that have banned TikTok. So TikTok, specifically ByteDance, and it's, a Chinese company. That's the big thing. But this is much more broad than just TikTok. The user agreement for just about any application or software that you put on a device. Yeah. Even websites that you go to are tracking you, right? Amazon,
it's a topic in itself, for sure.
So, everybody's tracking you, and it's asking for weird permissions, right? You can't look at your bank statement without Chase being like, Chase wants access to your photos. Like, what?
Yeah.
Chase wants to know that I went to the Dominican Republic 2 months ago.
Right. And I remember if I first saw some of these permissions, I was like, what the but, and then you kind of immune to it, right? You stop. Yeah, we just allow. We just allow everything, right? I mean,
like nobody even reads, right? Because most of us are just like, I don't have anything to hide.
My firstborn child, all right, whatever,
Yeah.
Wow.
So the act itself really is all about securing data. You know, the government is saying we want to make sure that your private data is safe and with you and anyone else that we allow to have it other than you. That's literally the act itself, right? And it boils down to the Secretary of Commerce, who, as we know, is expert in Homeland Security. Because when I think of, you know, the person that I want protecting my data, it's definitely the Secretary of Commerce. But the Secretary of Commerce, it gets to allow or not allow, you know, whomever to have our data. That's what it boils down to, basically. Is they can be like, you know, they could pick on TikTok and Huawei and you know, Chinese companies, but they could also be like, you know what, DaVinci Resolve is based in Ukraine. We don't like your Ukrainians today because we like Putin for the most part because he did something nice or something, and we're going to ban DaVinci Resolve. You can no longer use DaVinci Resolve to edit your videos or do any kind of media creation using DaVinci Resolve because they're based in Ukraine, and you know, I don't like Ukraine. I don't like Ukraine. Or because the president, you know, has a specific agenda that's anti-Ukraine and pro-Russian for whatever reason, right? So, you know, it's that sounds outlandish, but that's, and I was supposed to play the devil's advocate, right? And I was supposed to be the one that's like,
I told you I'm going to ruin that.
So yeah, I was supposed to be the one that's like, yeah, we definitely need the government to tell us what we can and can't have on our phones.
It's too hard to do. I'm telling you, it's a hard position to take.
It is it's hard to be serious about that, a statement like that. But it does boil down to, it's not like it's not like it comes down to someone who's actually in charge of security in any kind of way. We're talking about the Secretary of Commerce, who is appointed, not elected, appointed by the President of the United States. So I believe the candidate that it's chosen by the president. I think they have to be approved by Congress, but either way, it's not like an elected official. You know, you know, it doesn't sit right with me, and I get that we want we want our data secure. And I'm not against that. My biggest problem is the person who's going to be in charge of this is going to be acting under someone who has an agenda, right? Yeah. And is that person?
And even if we were to assume that the people right now are wholly, you know, great, well-intentioned, that's a precedent. You know, we've seen this. You know, now that power is there. You know, we said it was the president maybe selected this person. Well, you know, all you awesome progressives, nothing against you, but let's say, you know, Donald Trump weasels his way back in there and selects someone that you just love for this position. What is he going to do with this, right? He does decide he loves Putin.
That was exactly my point earlier, right?
Yeah,
right. You know, with DaVinci Resolve, or maybe it's not DaVinci Resolve, maybe it's another company that I'm thinking of. Anyway, but exactly right. So we know that Biden is not pro-Russia. We know that Trump is. So if you're a Ukrainian company and you have an app that's widely used in the United States, you know, whatever that piece of software may be, and maybe there's a bunch of maybe it's business software, right? Maybe let's get outside of social media for a second. we can, because this doesn't talk about social media specifically. This is any kind of application that or software that can go on a device, right?
Right.
Right. So you could be a company and your business depends on a certain software that's coming from Ukraine. But depending on who's in charge at the top level, may or may not be pro-Ukraine or pro-Russia, and that could impact you. You know, even though your security, you know, your data is not actually at risk. It's just because this company is based in Ukraine, right? And so we could go after TikTok and be like, well, you know, TikTok is recording all this stuff in their end user license agreement. It says that they're tracking you and all this kind of things, but maybe TikTok isn't nefarious. Yeah, ByteDance is a Chinese company, but let's just say that ByteDance is not a nefarious company, right? Some people are gonna be like, it's China, it has to be nefarious, but I'm saying maybe not. Maybe it isn't, and they get banned. And it's silly that we banned them because they're not actually doing anything nefarious with the data. But we end up allowing a different company from somewhere else, right? Because they have no affiliation with China, but we're just like, oh, this Canadian company is great, you know, but then it's that Canadian company that ends up doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And you know, not that Canadians would do that. This is a terrible example because most Canadians are very
I don't know. Good old Trudeau. He's not super popular right now, as far as, you know, you're talking about authoritarians. So,
well, you know, you're a DeSantis fan, and I am not. So
well,
I'm
just gonna throw that out there. Huh? I'm not as big as a DeSantis fan as I was like someone like Ron Paul. You know, someone I don't. He's new to me, but you know I've heard both. We're getting on a wild tangent, but you threw me on it under the bus here. So anyone that you know, I'm going to look at someone's actions, and anyone that sticks up for individual freedom is doing something right. Now, I would say that DeSantis doesn't always do that. You probably know as well as I do. There's been a lot of questionable moves that are not necessarily protecting individual freedoms there. So, but yeah, I mean, what were we sorry? Go back to what you were going to say.
Well, so my point is while the act itself sounds good, right? In that we want to be able to protect our data, we want to be able to ban anyone who wants to do something nefarious and bad with anything with the data. The big problem that I have is the person who's in charge of whether or not someone or something gets banned isn't the right person who should be making that decision. One. Two, I think that part of the onus is kind of on us, right? And you know, ultimately we make the choice whether or not we're going to install TikTok on our phones. So you could always not. I mean, I get that TikTok is popular, but you could also not install TikTok. That's an option too, right? So I think that we should take some onus on who we give our data to, and I fear for someone in the government who's being paid by someone else who's got some sort of other agenda is going to make that decision for me. That's where I have a problem with it. And you know, you and I talked about individual rights and preserving individual rights. Well,
what do you mean? You don't want? I feel so happy that I have someone, you know, protecting me from the communists. You know, what if I was to make the wrong choice and have someone in control of my, you know, my decisions and my data? I mean, I wouldn't want someone to control it. So I'm so glad we have people controlling us to protect us from other people that are to control us.
Right. I totally get it. I also, you know, really like, people who know nothing about something and giving them decisions
You must have watched
over me.
You must have watched the Congress talk about technology.
Well, I watched them talk to the CEO of TikTok, and I also watched the Zuckerberg one from a few years ago.
Oh,
We
yeah.
talk about that too.
Yeah, I don't know why people aren't discussing that more, because
but
this sounds like round two. It's almost identical, right?
So I'm trying to think of a specific example, right? But I just through both of them, Congress is just like, you're being super evasive, and I'm thinking in my head, it's the same thing that with that Zuckerberg and the other CEO are thinking, which is, you haven't asked a coherent question.
Yeah, I don't know how to respond to that.
I don't know how to respond to this. And Congress is like, it's a yes/no question, and but but the question asked was like, why is the sky blue?
Yeah.
Right, and they're like,
yes or no, yes or no. Why is the sky blue? Like,
water particles in the sky, no. and they're like, no, it's a yes or no question. Like, oh, no.
Yeah. Yep.
What we have is a bunch of people who know nothing about technology in charge of something like that, and the purpose of this podcast was to only talk about this bill, but we could relate it totally back to like right to repair and watching some of those hearings as well, where you get a whole bunch of people asking weird questions, people who clearly know nothing about technology, right? And they're being swayed by the pro Apple, pro Samsung. We need OEMs to be in charge of repair only. People who, because your data is at risk if someone touches the screen on your phone, right? If someone repairs the screen on your phone and they repair an external part, clearly your data is at risk. And you have people there who know nothing about the technology, and they get scared, right? And they're just like, oh no, I can't let this random person down the road who says they fix his iPhones touch my iPhone. I can only trust the kid at the Apple store because he's a robot, right? That's what these people are telling me is Apple only uses safe robots to take my information. And the guy at Fix It Phone is that guy's going to take my information and sell it to China and TikTok, probably. I don't know. So it's weird thought just popped into my head is that people get all up in arms about a repair person taking data from your device, right? Yet how many of us have signed user agreements with Apple, with Samsung, with Google, with all the apps that we have downloaded to share our information, right? Like, the information's already out there. It's just kind of crazy to me.
Yeah. Next week, we're hoping to get to one we've been really wanting to talk about. We're going to talk about, we want to try to find some more education. It seems to be what everyone likes to hear. So if you're with us next week, we're going to do something, hopefully something around education and maybe career development or something like that. We're still working on it.
Yep.
I think that's about, I don't have a ton more about the TikTok ban. It's kind of frightening to me, but we live in an age right now where it seems like it's just one thing after another. So
just bonkers is the new normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess one more thing before we're finished, unless you have more, but is the obvious thing here, is that this really can't. I mean, not that Congress hasn't butchered the Constitution already, but they can't do this. Like I mean, they can, but because we have a First Amendment right, and so, and, I'm sure they'll find ways to either ignore it but that's something that, I don't know if you want to expand upon that. I don't think I want to talk much more about it, but it's kind of saddens me that we've just completely lost our attachment to our rights.
So, when it comes to, you can use the national security excuse and get away with just about anything at this point, right? That started with the Patriot Act.
Yep.
So yeah, people can scream First Amendment right, but someone else in charge of something, like the Secretary of Commerce, who's the expert in all things, can just be like, oh no, clearly this is this is a threat to national security, and
when is the last time
your rights go out the window?
Right, but when's the last time you can recall we weren't in some emergency state? That's the thing is
September 10th, 2001.
Yep, exactly. So
yeah,
there's always going to be some reason for taking away our liberties, for sure.
Well, right, and you can always go back to that. It shames me because I'm kind of a history guy, but a lot happened after Pearl Harbor was bombed, right? In response, the trouncing of rights and civil liberties, right? After the bombing of Pearl Harbor, there was pretty radical responses then too. In fact, it's hard for me to compare the two because after Pearl Harbor was attacked, right? We had Japanese citizens rounded up and put in camps, right? And so that is way more extreme than anything that we're talking about today, right? So it's hard to compare them, but this is certainly history repeating itself in that the government loves to use fear to trample rights. Yeah.
That's definitely true, and I think you're right that control has gotten a lot softer. I don't know that it's
so. I think what they've done is they've they've certainly changed tactics. I would say, right?
Yeah.
Because if we started rounding up Chinese citizens, a lot of people would have a lot of problems with that, including me, right?
Yes.
That would be horrific.
Yeah.
So yeah, the government has gotten more tactful, but even within the government now, with the way that you hear some of our elected politicians speak, you think that they would be a pro, getting, trampling on certain people's rights. So it's both sad and frightening, and I wish that, in the 90 years since Pearl Harbor that we have grown. In a lot of ways, as a society, we have not. I don't know if I'm going to keep that in in the final cut of this podcast. That was a down note. That was a down note. I'm supposed to come in with jokes. I'm supposed to come in with the jokes and be like, the Secretary of Commerce, man, I don't even know what his name is, but I certainly, trust in this man's judgment and what I think he's got my data as his top priority. The safety of my data is his top priority. He's not going to do anything bad with it. And make sure no other entity, whether they're Chinese or Korean or Russian, Mexican, ain't nobody, Canadian, French, that, none of them are going to take my data. None of them, right? Freedom fries.
Oh, you went there.
America.
Right. On that note,
I'm going to stop recording. For anyone who's made it this far, I don't even know what to say. I thank you, I guess, or I'm sorry, both. Alrighty.